left out. And I hope mine's a little happier, because I've been over to the State Texas Museum, and you know over there you can't help but be knocked over in your seat. Walking through the doors, it says, "God bless Texas." And then just recently, about a year or two ago, we've had the state pledge to recognize that we are one state under God. And then on the south side of the entrance of the Capitol is the monument to the heroes of the Alamo, and engraved in stone is "God in Texas, victory or death." Well, I found out that those words were uttered by William Barrett Travis, the commander of the Alamo. But did you know that 6 months before his death, he wrote a letter to the Methodist Conference back east, and he requested missionaries to come to Texas because there were 60,000 destitute souls in need of salvation. Well, his letter was later read at that conference, and it was published in a newspaper. And what do you know? The Methodists, the Episcopalians, the Baptists, the Presbyterians, and the Reformed Catholics, I call them Catholic-Episcopalians, then poured into Texas, and they established the first colleges, the first schools, the first churches, the first orphanages. I'm going to skip the FYI section because I think I only have 2 minutes left. For the past 10 years, I have been researching the rest of the story of Texas history. That is, the spiritual heritage, to be infused with our state history. You won't go to sleep in my history class because God breathes on his story. For instance, 300 years ago, the Catholics provided the written record of trying to work with the Indian tribes and nations to bring peace and live together and coexist. Father Margil de Jesus was the most revered padre in Spanish colonial Texas and one of the more important missionaries on the American field, and is today a candidate for sainthood. And according to the Constitution of the state of Coahuila y Tejas, in 1827, we were declared to be a Catholic state, and we couldn't practice Protestantism. And so, by the battle at San Jacinto, its spiritual significance, it not only gave civil freedom and political freedom, but we got religious freedom. So all those Catholic-Presbyterians, that group, could practice their form of their faith. Then, before Houston became the official president of the Republic, the ad interim president was David G. Burnett, who was the first president of the Texas Bible Society. He was known for carrying a gun in one pocket and a Bible in the other. That same society sent 2,400 Bibles into Texas, so they would know immigrants were coming to a land of Bibles. My, wouldn't that change our borders if we did that today?
Ms. Payne, thank you. Do I have any questions for the testifier? Thank you very much.
May I have a closing statement?
If that was your 3 minutes, if you've got a sentence to
I
summarize
do.
really quickly.
I wanted to tell you what William Barrett said. Texas is composed of the shrewdest and most intelligent population of any new country on earth. Do I get an amen? In sending your heralds to the four corners of the earth, remember Texas. My fellow educators, writers, publishers, and honored board members, let us do that. Let us remember Texas and revere God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenna,
Thank you for the opportunity of speaking with you today. The paperwork that I handed you, I don't believe that a lot of the board members know who the person is. I come as a reminder today of the inadequacies of what has happened in our textbooks and how our children identify with themselves. At this point, I wish to say that this meeting is about the purpose of addressing the policy and failure of this panel for not including the contributions of non-whites to our state history, and to bring about much needed changes and attitudes. Let's not forget that our country is founded on Christian moral values, Having said that, I wish to state the following. During the 1900s, any person or labor leader, activist, or just someone who addressed injustice was labeled as a communist. Because of these practices, we should not exclude people like Emma Tenayuka, who was a great labor leader. Let us begin to include the truth in our textbook so that our children's children will read the truth. Correct our history. Our Texas may follow like other states in trying to pass laws to prevent the correction of our state history. Beginning by telling the truth of the Slavoric rebellion of the Alamo, camouflaged as a declaration of independence by European Mexican citizens who committed treason against their newfound country of Mexico for the right to keep slavery alive. Anglo interpretation only, and views that the daughters of the Texas Republic protect like junkyard dogs. And while you are at it, state clearly that the attitudes on this panel reflect Christian moral values. The same Christian moral values that made Texas the most vicious, violent place on the face of the earth for all non-whites to live following the Battle of the Alamo. A right-wing state when it comes to the content of our textbooks and to the deliberate exclusion of non-whites to its Texas history. Also, don't forget to tell the very truth that the Ku Klux Klan was born within the Christian church in this state and had a chapter in almost every Christian church in the state of Texas. Or will knowing that continue to reflect the right-wing punitive outlook that the state has placed, excluding our children from identifying their role models in our Texas history books. By that, I don't forget to state that the word Mexican means Native American. It comes from the word Mexica that Hernán Cortés encountered when he landed in Mexico and identified them as the Native Americans. We also need to include the genocide that happened south of the border of approximately 50 million Native Americans, and the genocide that ensued north of the border following the Battle of the Alamo and the Indian Removal Act of another 50 to 60 million Native Americans. That has all but been forgotten and has not ever been mentioned in Texas history books. I'm open to questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rocha? Thank you very much.